Hello, I am Amy Kates.
And I'm Greg Kesler. We're the managing partners of Kates Kesler Organization Consulting. In the next 10 minutes, we'll give you an overview of best practices for building an organization that can execute on a multidimensional global strategy. These insights are based on our research and consulting experience with over 25 large companies over the past decade.
CEOs often call us 2 or 3 years after major transformation. They are frustrated that their sophisticated global organization model is not delivering business results. The complexity and friction caused by people struggling to work across organizational boundaries often makes it difficult to execute growth plans and creates enormous stress for managers around the world. As a business leader, you can avoid this frustration and waste of management energy. The gap between strategic intention and the reality of execution can be bridged through activation. This video series will share insights around a set of practices we call the 5 Activators: unique value-added layers, innovation networks, the business handshake, governance and decision-making, and matrix-ready leaders. Before we can get into the detail, let's understand what typically goes wrong on the path from strategy to organization to performance. We will start with defining the global operating model. Many companies change their operating model as part of a strategic shift. If, like these companies, yours has multiple lines of business, multiple geographic and customer markets, different consumer categories, or you go to market through wholesale, retail, and/or digital channels, you have a global operating model. And if your business portfolio is closely related and you are trying to leverage common customers, infrastructure, or technology platforms, then you are likely to have the most complex type of organization there is, the matrix. We believe that a global operating model can be a unique source of competitive advantage. But here's a little secret. Under the fancy graphics that many companies use to brand and communicate their model, most global operating structures look about the same. They're made up of regional commercial units, global functions, and global business units, put together in a matrix. This is PepsiCo's operating model. The real differentiator is to use your organizational model to achieve both agility and leverage. When you enable people to collaborate across organizational boundaries, time zones, cultures, and national boundaries to create value at the critical connection points, and you can move at the speed that consumers, customers, and competitors demand, then you have a winning formula. Unfortunately, and unnecessarily, many companies struggle to realize the intentions of these elegant operating models. We'll take you through the 6 most common mistakes.
As companies become global, the instinct is to overlay global product or brand teams onto an existing structure. This is a mistake. Instead, we want each layer to have a unique, value-adding contribution. Excess layers create confusion regarding who has the authority. They dilute accountability, and they disempower people, as overlapping layers pull managers down into the work of the layer below. The second mistake is to declare that the functions are now global and authorize them to set global standards, to create global programs and drive shared services without redesigning these groups end to end. When this happens, we see duplicated and uncoordinated global, regional, and local activity, increase costs to the business, and shadow functions, often created to cut through the confusion and the excess layers. Third, we need to be honest. Power dynamics change when we try to create integrated global organizations. Senior executives are often reluctant to set out clear decision rights. Protection of territory, fear of loss of status, past relationships, both good and bad, and tacit agreements to stay out of one another's business all contribute to an avoidance of the hard work of moving power to purpose. When executives don't explicitly allocate decision authority, however, members of the extended leadership team struggle to be effective. Fourth, structure is one lever we can adjust. As important as structure change is, the redesign of business processes and management systems to enable new conversations and decision processes. When these are not attended to, the operators tend to reject the new model and go back to old patterns and habits of interaction. A fifth error is to change the organization, but not the measures of success. Smart, bold changes in metrics have an impact on culture. A leadership and management team must understand new expectations. They must be motivated to work in the new environment and be given the skills to succeed. We do find people who just don't want to work in a matrix. More typically, they resist because they just don't feel prepared for the level of cooperation and influence sharing that is now required. The final mistake we see, and perhaps most critical, is that the CEO doesn't change the work of the executive team. If the team is composed of successful leaders who've been rewarded in the past for managing their P&Ls or their functional responsibilities in a relatively siloed fashion, they now need to come to the table as enterprise leaders. CEOs often give in to the fear of missing financial targets if division leaders have to now become engaged in enterprise activities. But until they do, no other changes will be made.
What does successful activation look like? It doesn't mean that you don't have complexity. Your organization will be as complex as your strategy. Rewarded complexity creates value through horizontal connections between global and local teams and across businesses and markets. The mistakes we discussed above result in unrewarded complexity. Companies that embrace and master the challenge of rewarded complexity see 5 benefits. Ideas, innovations, and talent move quickly across brands, categories, products, and geographies. Product, functional, and regional teams and processes are designed to drive big ideas into more markets. That doesn't mean standardization or centralization. It looks like collaboration and co-design across the global network. The company can take advantage of scale without losing connection to local markets and customers. Leaders know how to leverage assets without slowing down decision-making. Global and local teams share accountability for market and product growth opportunities with very clear strategy. Targets are co-owned by the local and global teams. Finally, global functions have the right levels and the right placement of talent, so they are able to leverage expertise and know-how around the world at the best cost.
To get these results requires sustained attention over time, often 2 to 3 years for a large company. Activation starts with design choices, but continues as the leaders and managers in the organization engage in new business conversations and decisions. Some of these interactions, such as business planning, may take place only once or twice a year. The first time will be difficult. Activation requires learning and adjustment. The next time will be better. Let's end this discussion by introducing the 5 activators. Start with designing the right connections. Think about these as the wiring of structure and process, vertically and horizontally. Ensure that every layer provides unique value with a specific role to play in linking center-led and regionally dispersed resources. Design and use networks to move ideas, innovations, and talent horizontally. The right connections enable the right conversations. The key conversation happens over the business handshake when global and local leaders co-own goals, measures, and mutual expectations. This is more than alignment. It is a shared vision of the possibilities across organizational product, geographic, and functional boundaries. Supporting the right conversations is a set of smart guardrails that guide collaborative decision-making. We need the delegation vertically down into the operating structure so that the middle is empowered to take action. And horizontally, governance conversations sort out the role of the global center versus that of the regional organizations so that the priorities are clear and initiatives can be executed with speed. All of this is necessary, but not sufficient. The wiring is nothing without the right know-how. Leaders who have been selected for, developed, and enabled against a profile for succeeding in global complex organizations.
The other videos in this series will share more detail around each of the 5 activators. Meanwhile, please visit our website, kateskesler.com, for articles and more information on organization design.